I'm done.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and call this budget wrap-up workshop to order at 7 o'clock. I'll start with an approval of the agenda. I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, second from Commissioner Clark. Any comments, questions from the dais? Public have any comments or questions? Here are none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I want to say for the record, Commissioner Coleman is going to be a few minutes late, but he will be here before we get too deep into it. And with that, I'm going to go to our one agenda item and turn it over to Assistant City Manager Dallas.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. We are here tonight for your budget wrap-up. Tonight is largely just a recap of all the decisions that the commission's made throughout the budget process. Not looking for any direction tonight unless the commission wants to provide some, but just going to go through where we are, and in about 2 weeks bring you back your budget for first hearing and adoption. In front of you should have two documents. The first would be the PowerPoint presentation. Yours looks nicer than mine. And then the second is our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years for all funds. So, as always, start with the budget timeline. We are nearing the end here. As I said, the next big item coming before the commission will be in 2 weeks from today. That's going to be the first budget hearing. Following, hopefully, a successful adoption of that, we'll have our second budget hearing in September, and our budget will go into effect in October. We are working with the impact fee consultants to plan our impact fee workshop for the first half of October. We don't have a date yet, but it's probably going to be in that first 2 or 3 weeks of October.
That's on that, when the when the person comes to talk to us about the impact fees, ask that person to present to the commission his or her opinion on how much you can go up after you have the study.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So going through some of the previous commission direction and what our budget is based off of in terms of personnel, we have a COLA and a minimum wage increase with an inverse merit. This is the same plan and process that the commission adopted last year. Remembering that this includes a flat amount for employees under a certain wage with a lower merit, and as the more you earn, the flat fee goes down, but the merit goes up. This was our way of addressing compression, but also getting our employees above that $15 an hour minimum wage. We've got 3 new FTEs in the budget. I'll talk about a little bit more, but we were able to reduce some of our dependent insurance coverage costs this year again. We have some major infrastructure projects funded in this year's budget, which again we'll talk about a little bit later. In terms of revenues, I think the big takeaway from this year's budget is that currently the budget is balanced on a decrease in property taxes. So decreasing the millage rate from 5.9999 to 5.9244, which is a slight reduction in your property tax rate. Again, impact fees are a part of next year's budget process. Nothing in the current year's budget is funded with impact fees because they don't exist yet. But we do anticipate that sometime in the beginning of the fiscal year, the commission will adopt impact fees, and then we can amend the budget to start spending those fees as the commission desires. There's been no change in the fire assessment rate and no change in your utility tax rates. And then we do have slight increases in our utilities, which we will talk about in a little bit.
Question. What is realistically the difference between an impact fee and just raising permit fees?
When you talk about permits, you're talking about building department, building fees.
Right.
The biggest thing, and Jamie, please step in when I go too far askew here, impact fees are restricted. You can only use impact fees for the infrastructure in which you've adopted them for. Your building permit fees are restricted to your building department. So if you raised your building department permit fees, we could only spend that money to operate the building department itself. The other thing is, in building permit fees, there's no rational nexus. There's nothing that says we have these fees because you are impacting us and costing us this much money in our capital facilities. Whereas building permits are generally just set to cover the cost of administering the building code.
That sounds, that makes sense. Is that what you would agree with?
Correct.
Okay.
I got an A on my homework.
What?
So I got an A on my homework there.
There you
Jamie,
go.
Jamie graded my paper. So going a little bit more into personnel, FRS, Florida Retirement System, did have some small increases this year. Cost the city about $65,000. Health insurance increases we're very excited about. We were anticipating doom and gloom. Everybody around us has had double-digit health increases, 15, 20% health insurance increases. Thankfully, ours came in at below 3% this year on the base employee-only insurance. So we had budgeted for a 15% increase. We took that difference between what we had budgeted for and the increase, and we've pushed that into dependent care to, again, reduce the employee's contribution that they need to make for child, spouse, or family health insurance coverage. It's one of the things we've heard from our employees and from some of our competitors in the employment market is that we're not competitive when it comes to dependent care. So we made some really good progress this year in reducing those dependent care coverages. I think in the last few years, I can think of at least 4 or 5 employees, good employees we've lost because they couldn't afford health care for their dependents.
So this isn't a -3, this is just a -3?
It's a 3% increase on our health insurance rates from our provider.
Dallas, what are the numbers though for the health insurance for the dependents? I know we were quite expensive and then so if that is the case, what is 15% or whatever we're giving them?
So in our current fiscal year, though, if you were to put someone on health insurance right now, for family coverage, the lowest rate is $1,000 a month for an employee to pay. We were able to reduce that to $732 a month for an employee. That is our base level plan. If you want to go to the premium plan, we'll say, currently that is a $1,700 a month employee-only contribution, and we were able to reduce that to $1,300 a month. For our base plan for employee and spouse, we were able to reduce it from $700 a month to $550 a month. And for employee and child, we were able to reduce it from $500 a month to $460 a month.
Dallas, a few years ago, the commission canceled offering health care to the elected officials. And there was a argument, well, we get a group rate, so if we take off 6 people, that takes us out of that group. That turned out not to be true, but we did say that it could be true, and we were going to keep an eye on it. And I haven't asked that question since that decision. So we've added some employees. Does having 6 more people on actually end up saving us money because it bumps us into another category? We're still way away from that.
The number is 50, so as long as you have 50 lives on your
50.
plan, you get rated differently. I think the next number is 250.
Okay, that sounds.
So the concern, 'cause I believe it was probably a decade ago, because I know it was Commissioner Fort was still on the board. The concern was that we would dip below the 50.
Right.
Which we didn't, to your point, but we've got enough lives on our plan now that we're not really in jeopardy of dipping below the 50. I think last I checked, we had like mid-60s covered.
Okay. Does that make sense?
You can buy it if you want.
I don't think we even offer it for us to buy it. And
No,
it's been a while since we've had anybody that's needed that, so it hasn't become an issue. It was an issue when we were trying to get off of it because we did have a commissioner who was really dependent on that insurance.
Yeah. Currently, the commission's not eligible to receive
We don't,
health
we're
insurance.
just out of that. Commissioner Marjorie?
Does the employees of the fire department, they fall under this plan, or do they have a separate one?
They fall underneath this one.
Okay.
All right. So compensation, as I mentioned earlier, we got merit and COLA raises, same process we did last year. We've planned to do the compensation study, and of course, we're still working on that minimum wage amendment. In terms of long-term staffing, as we discussed at our general fund workshop a few months ago, we look every year at our population increase and our service levels to make sure we can continue to offer the same level of service in all of our departments. Generally benchmarking, it's 1 full-time employee per every 100 residents. If you go off the thought that we have 7,700 residents, we should have 77 full-time equivalents. We are just shy of 70 today. And then we've got those 3 positions in the budget. We discussed other benefits. Every year we look at other benefits. This year we are offering some additional benefits for the employee to purchase if they'd like. And that's pretty much it on that one. In terms of operating, the operating budget, there's not many enhancements. As the commission's aware, we're experiencing issues with not only getting goods delivered, but also with the cost of goods and services. Florida's CPI was 7% last time I checked. So if you look at the budget, you'll see that there is an increase in the budget, but it tracks with our increase in population and CPI. There's no increases in programs or projects from the city. We do have the contingency fund funded at $50,000, and we do have the Economic Development Incentive Program funded at $50,000 as well. So going into your governmental funds, here's your general fund budget. It's up about $800,000 from last year to this year, and you don't get to look at it.
That one was flickering, Ada. But
While y'all are working on that, Jamie, I don't see, Brian's not here. Are you aware of anybody, or Dallas, are you aware of anybody that is seeking to take part of that economic development plan?
Not currently, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And that money, if we don't get an applicant that qualifies, that money rolls back into the general fund reserves? Okay.
What we've been doing is rolling it forward to the next year.
Okay.
So, for example, it wasn't funded in the current year. Yeah, so if we had $50,000 and you only spent 25, I would roll 25 to the following year and then supplement it to keep that 50.
Okay.
So expenses up. The biggest thing you'll see there is we're proposing a decrease, a $550,000 quote unquote loss in the general fund. What that is a transfer of your fund balance to your capital improvement fund. As the commission, I'm sure, remembers, we have a surplus of reserves in your general fund above and beyond what our emergency reserves are. So we are proposing to use those reserves to fund the capital improvement plan for next year. So that's funding for the next phase of the City Hall, for Southwest 15th, and for Seaboard Drive. So as you can see, that's a 7% increase in revenues, 13% increase in expenditures, mainly driven by that $550,000 transfer. It is based off of your rollback rate of 5.9244. And then just if the commission was interested, if you did want to adopt the same rate as you currently have at 5.9999, it would generate you an extra $50,000 to spend. So in terms of your capital improvement fund, we are continuing to fund that with the general fund balance, as I mentioned, but also the water public service tax and the solid waste fees that the commission raised last year. And then when impact fees are adopted, if they're adopted, they will flow into the capital improvement fund as well to pay for capital improvements. So this is the same information, just put some numbers to it. Capital improvement fund for next year is funding City Hall, Southwest 15th, and the downtown connector road.
Say that again, Alex?
The capital improvement fund next year, the projects being funded there are the City Hall expansion, the Southwest 15th extension, and the downtown connector road, which is Seaboard Drive. The American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, just as a reminder to the commission, we talked about this when we discussed the governmental funds. We have identified about $2.6 billion in projects. The commission has about $430,000 remaining. It was the commission's head nod at that time for us to wait until we see what happens with the half-cent sales tax and get a better idea on what kind of funding we may have for road projects before deciding what to do with the remaining $430,000. So that money is holding until that decision. So that pretty much completes the governmental funds. You also have your wild spaces funds and your smaller SRF, or smaller special revenue funds, but those are all the big highlights and decisions you guys have made.
Okay, excellent 15-minute summary of what was about 6 hours worth of workshops beforehand. So great job. Any?
Halfway.
Come on in.
Who's got the nice tires out there in the back of the truck?
I was gonna guess it, but
Maybe not anymore.
All right, do we have any questions? Commissioner Coleman, welcome. We just finished up a review of our general fund conversations, millage rates, FTEs, capital outlay plans, City Hall, 15th, Seaboard Drive, things that we're moving forward. Anybody got any questions? Everybody? It's exactly what was discussed in all the workshops.
I thought Seaboard was kind of at a dead end.
I think, I'll let you go ahead, Jamie.
Mr. Mayor, we still have the funding in there. We're currently still seeking the land rights from CSX and Florida Northern, and continue to be hopeful we will be successful in that.
The funding identified is for preliminary design, it's not for construction.
We're not at a dead end. We're just playing phone tag.
Being hopeful.
Yeah, we're a persistent bunch too.
Yeah,
Jamie's gonna wave the wand.
that's right. Okay, hearing no questions, move right along, Dallas.
All right, moving into your proprietary funds, fancy word for your utilities. We discussed some of the long-term projects coming down for the city commission. Obviously, the Twin Pairs is a big project coming, the elevated storage tanks, wastewater treatment plant. Staffing, of course, is a big issue in our utilities. Expansion of the utility system and utilities and public works operations center. We discussed some of the debt that's going to be needed to be issued to fund some of these projects. Commission seems relatively on board with all of these projects, so they are included in your budget, at least for the initial phases. We will be bringing back in October a debt issuance for the 337 water main extension. We're working on that with our financial advisors, and that'll be coming back fairly soon.
Before you leave that slide, Dallas, I just want to say, because I think it bears repeating over and over again, because of the financial planning of this commission, we've pretty much been able to kind of pay as we go on all of these projects. So we've been working on these projects now for 2 years, maybe 3, and we've been able to fund ourselves. So we're 3 years in on these things, and we're just now having to go outside to issue some debt. So to me, I think that's worth a kudos to the commission and to staff to be able to say, because of the policies, because of the prudence of you guys, it's not like we say, well, we want to do this, now we got to go out and borrow $2 million to get started, right? We're able to kind of get down the line on some of these, make sure these are projects that are worthwhile. Now we know they are, and 3 years in, we're just now having to start to go out and borrow. So good job, staff. Good job, commission, getting us here.
The wastewater treatment plant facility operating permit, as we've discussed many times, our permit was renewed, gave us a little bit of extra capacity, but with that extra capacity came a lot of extra strings, sampling requirements, staffing requirements, biosolid changes, additional reporting that requires engineering and analysis. All that to say, we are seeing increases in our rates based off of not only the cost of us doing service from a economic standpoint, but also these additional requirements have been placed on us by the state of Florida.
That's current.
Yes, sir.
What's your question? These are not the current requirements. These are going to be the requirements
No,
once we go
these
to the
are
regional.
partially current.
Partially current. We renewed our wastewater operating permit in late 2020. That increased the level of sampling that we have to do, changed what we have to do with biosolids. It continues, it's basically a stepped approach all the way to 2026. Every year, based on that permit, there's going to be increased cost.
At 50,000 a year?
No, and I had some people on social media also tell me that these bullet points were confusing. I think the additional reporting is $50,000 a year. Each of these bullets is its own separate line item.
Correct.
It's just there's $50,000 a year just in capacity analysis. Is that correct, Mr. Jones?
That is correct.
So it's the 16-hour days, 16 hours, 7 days a week. That's additional staff. 6 additional. That's what we're stepping into.
$50,000 a year right now that they're adding to us.
No, the 50.
No,
The
just for the
50,000 is
reporting.
just for the reporting. It's a lot more. We also have to pay for biosolids. We have to pay for additional staff. We
Just the
also-
reporting is $50,000.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Tallahassee.
An administrative order that requires 7 new reports signed by a professional engineer every year until the new plant is built in 2026.
So engineers and lawyers are gonna go in the same term. There's the problem.
I had someone say, well, basically what you're, because I posted this slide actually, just so we could start front loading people on what's getting pushed down to us. And they said, well, basically you're telling me that you're raising the rates. They said you're raising the rates and you're blaming Tallahassee, right? You're saying it's their fault. And I understand why our residents get frustrated with the finger pointing, but I don't know of a more honest way to say it. I mean, these are the requirements that are being handed down to us by Tallahassee. Nobody here got the opportunity to give any feedback on these standards. And we have to adhere to these standards in order to get the permit. So there we are.
Yes, as part of our permit renewal, the city of Newberry was incorporated in something they call the Santa Fe BMAP, Basin Management Action Plan, that changed the level of sampling and reporting we have to do and increased the level of treatment that we have to provide, and gave us basically a calendar of things that we have to do every year until the new plant is scheduled to be online, and the new plant has to be online and operating by March of 2026. Every year, the bar gets set higher.
Incremental step in. All right. We also discussed with the city commission our utility development or impact fees. As a reminder, these are fees that new development pays connecting to our systems to pay for the increased capacity of those systems. Last time we changed the fees was in 2007. State law restricts how much we can increase to 12.5%, so staff is recommending an increase of 12.5%. So raising our water rates, our water impact fee to $886 and our wastewater to $4,100. As well as funding in the budget, that formal study for next year. These fees go to pay for capacity, so they'll pay for the expansion of the system, partially for the new wastewater system. The current development fees are paying for the water main you see being installed down State Road 26, new wells, those sorts of things.
Alice, can you check, is your microphone on?
Yes, but I can do a better job of talking into it.
Okay. Or is his audio's coming through fine? Okay. Commissioner Clark, do you have a question?
Well, we were just talking, I was kind of like a caveat off of Tim when he was asked that question earlier. It wasn't exactly what I was asking when he was talking about the impact fee. But the one we were going to develop, or that we're going to get the study on, that if we pass is a true impact fee. This one here is basically a development fee. So we're going to have 2 impact fees.
No. We already have, you could say that these are impact fees, we just call them connection fees.
Well, it says,
But the impact fees that we're looking at now wouldn't be for these, they would be for roads and public.
Buildings.
Right. So
That'd be
they'll have a study that would allow us potentially to figure out what our connection fees or impact fees should be here. For instance, the City of High Springs just went from $4,000 on their wastewater to $14,000, right? In this one budget cycle. But that's a separate impact fee than roads or public buildings.
but our impact fee we're talking about, it'll be for each home that comes will pay for that
Right, but inside
above and beyond
that-
this.
Right, but inside that, so when you think of impact fees, there's all these different things
Yeah.
you're paying for impacts for.
Got it?
They'll all bundle together and they say, okay, you owe us X amount for the impact, but 4,000 of that would be for wastewater, 800 of it would be for water.
Then the
all-
other one would be for the
Then
roads.
one would be for roads and one would be for something else, so. Together but separate.
So what'd you say, High Springs went from 4,000 to 14,000
That's what the commissioner told me
on what?
on wastewater.
Connection fee?
Their
Development fee.
wastewater connection fee.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Care-
How can they
Connection
do that
fees are
with-
something different.
Well, their wastewater impact fee.
I mean, ours, we can only go up 12.5%. How can they?
We're
go
gonna
up?
have that.
They had a study
conversation.
done, but which
Yeah.
allows you to go higher. They paid for a study. but I
gonna
won't get
talk
into the
about it.
legality
Yeah.
of what I think they're
We're
doing.
gonna-
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
Gosh.
All right, keep on going.
Engineer.
Engineer.
So going into the proposed rates, in your electric system, we're proposing a 1.5% rate increase beginning in January of 2023. Again, we're pushing the rate increase off into January, so we can hope that natural gas prices have come down, so we have some rate relief for our customers, as well as the fact that consumption in the winter is lower than it is in the middle of summer, so the impact won't be as harsh to our customers. It is an average net impact to the customer, about $1.55 a month. We require this to balance our budget, as we talked about at the last workshop. The big driver there is so that we can show financial feasibility, show that our electric system is solvent, making enough revenue to cover its expenses, so that when we go to debt issuance to cover some of these big projects coming down the line, we get a better interest rate, so we're not paying higher interest rates in the long run. So comparing ourselves to our peers in terms of electric rates, as you can see, this chart was compiled by the Florida Municipal Electric Association. We are right in the middle of electric service providers, both public providers, municipalities, and the IOUs. And then looking at other providers within our territory and GRU, you can see that we are the lowest service provider in our territory, a few dollars lower than Clay Electric and a few cents lower than Central Florida, and then about $40 lower than GRU.
Man, a lot of it.
Yeah. Alachua hasn't adjusted their power cost adjustment in a while. So they either are burning down their rate stabilization fund like we did, or they're just losing money. I will say Alachua did get into some very, very good power contracts, so they do have good rates. That is helping them through this as well. In your water, we're proposing a 4.5% rate increase. It's an average of $1.09 per month for our average customer. Again, that keeps us as the lowest residential rate in our area, fairly significantly lower than all of our peers, almost $1 in every category, compared to Alachua, Gainesville, High Springs, and Trenton. And then looking at the statewide averages for water consumption at 8,000 gallons, our bill would be about $32.13, where the average across the state is $39.92. So not only are we the lowest in our area, we're below average across the state of Florida. In wastewater rates, we're proposing a 2.5% increase. In both water and wastewater, I don't have it here, but if I remember correctly, the PSC CPI for this year was about 4.5%, so we either came in at or below the PSC CPI. So for wastewater, we're proposing a 2.5% increase in all rate categories. Average impact to residential customers $1.13 a month. And again, we maintain the lowest rates in the area by $3 at least, compared to High Springs and Trenton. Some of our peers, I know High Springs, for example, is doing a 9% rate increase this year. Alachua, I believe, had a 5.5% rate increase. So although the rate increases are hard, we are doing a little bit better than some of our neighboring cities here. Again, looking at it from a statewide perspective, the average cost for wastewater throughout the state at 8,000 gallons is $62, and Newberry comes in about $5 less than that at $57.
Dallas, do we have non-residents using our wastewater?
Yes, sir. Is your microphone on?
Yeah.
We have non-residential accounts, so the city, the schools, businesses,
Oh, okay.
restaurants will be non-residential accounts.
Okay.
Anybody who's not a house. So the total monthly impact across electric, water, and wastewater is about $377 a month. The average bills last month were about $270, so a little more than 1%, 2% increase across all the different rates. And again, that electric one starts in January. That's what I've got for utilities.
Okay. Any questions on the utility side? good.
Can we have a question over the whole thing, or we need to wait?
We
I
have
got
another section.
one more section.
No, wait till one more
I can
section,
wait.
we'll go back to the whole thing. Okay. All right, continue on.
You guys aren't the CRA board, but in case you happen to be interested in what the CRA's budget might be, if you perhaps were the CRA budget board, we took the feedback that the commission, that the CRA board gave us at the last CRA board meeting, and we adjusted the budget. So we shifted funds out of the administrative and operating cost into facade grants and other capital improvement programs. So we now have 92% of all the funds in the CRA are going towards projects in next year's budget. I do want to clarify, we have the overhead there at $3,200. That includes things such as, we have audit fees the CRA has to pay for, legal fees, my department's time in administering CRA, the commission's time, those sorts of things. That's a flat amount. We charge all of the other funds. And then the operations and training includes both the training budget for the CRA director to attend training, and then it would cover marketing materials and those sorts of things, so.
Dallas, we normally budget 5% in administration fees.
It's
So we're
3.5%.
across the board, I thought it was 5, we're talking about.
5% is
electric.
the general fund transfer and electric, which is equivalent to the franchise fee.
Okay.
The
Is that
interfund charges are
because-
3.5.
Is that because that's more administrative, more work? I don't want to get into a situation where it's costing our general fund to administer the CRA, right? The CRA is supposed to be a help to us, not a financial drain. So I know that the idea of cutting down the administrative, but if we're spending a lot of it managerial time administrating it, the CRA needs to be paying for that, because otherwise the general fund is paying for it, right? So 3.5 is the appropriate amount for CRA equivalent to other general fund transfers for administrative services. 5% in utilities because utilities is more complicated.
The 5% transfer is only in the electric fund, and it's because of the franchise fee. The electric fund pays 3.5% for administrative services. The water wastewater fund pay 3.5%.
So it's 8.5% total, 5%.
It gets more complicated than that because the 3.5% doesn't include the cost of fuel.
Right.
So it's,
Okay. All right. Y'all are good with 3.5? 3.5. Rock on.
big point here, 92% of the dollars coming into the CRA are going back into projects into the CRA. And then we had the budget, and then now I'm finished.
Has anybody done anything with this yet?
What?
Anybody asked for any grants or anything yet?
No, when the CRA board meets, that'll be one of the first questions. When you guys met as a CRA board, you said, we don't want to spend that much on administration.
We did.
Now that you're meeting as the commission who has to pay for the administration, I'm asking, do you want to pay for the administration? When you sit back as a CRA board, it'll be,
Why ask that question?
how do we have the facade grants? Right.
The CRA board is going to need to adopt a facade grant plan, which we've been working on. Because we didn't have any money to give out, we haven't pushed it very high, but we do have some examples for the CRA board to decide.
It's amazing how your perspective changes when your hat changes.
That's right. Okay, Commissioner Clark, you had a question, overall question.
I did. Just on the beginning, do we know what our COLA's gonna be for the entire group yet?
We're proposing 3%.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That's all?
I mean, the school board is proposing 0.9%, so,
Well, I mean, the cost of living is,
yeah,
well, maybe somebody ain't realized what everything is. I'm just asking the question.
right.
It's a
3% just seems low, cause food and gas and everything's high. I just didn't know how much money we had to go to
Well,
the
it's
employees.
3% COLA, and then there's a
And then the merit,
up to 5% merit.
up to 5% merit. So then you'd be really at the COLA. But anyway, okay, thank you.
If the commission wants to increase the COLA, we can make that happen.
It sounds like I got fixing to get a black eye up here with that.
No, I'm for it.
I mean, this board has always been very generous in trying to keep up.
Yeah,
I'm just pointing out that not every government agency around us cares as much about the employees as you do, but you guys also have some other large infrastructure things.
Yes.
So I think I think we found a balance here, trying to continue to care about the employees while moving some of these other
Well, we
projects
definitely need to,
forward.
yeah.
You do have a $50,000 swing if you keep the millage rate the same.
Right.
You could say that 50,000 needs to go to, what would that do for the COLA?
Each 1% in COLA in the general fund is about $45,000.
So you could do a 4% COLA if you want to stick to the same millage rate. Those are the kinds of conversations. It's kind of speak now or forever hold your peace about these kind of things, right? We have spent a lot of time working on those big three infrastructure projects. We've spent a lot of time working on a merit COLA process that
I'm
we've-
good with it. I just want to know what it was and then, because I know, man, right now, it's, the COLAs are up there. I'm sorry that your school board, your
Me too.
finally duly elected school board don't see fit to give your teachers
More than a point.
more than a .9
Well, I
when the
appreciate
cost of
that.
living is about
Yeah.
8.9.
It hurts even more when they advertise
So-
that they give an 11% raise when it was really 0.9.
Yeah,
It's a slight difference
I mean, seriously, it's,
in numbers, but anyway.
anyway,
Right?
go ahead, thank you.
I got a
Commissioner Coleman.
So last year when we did it, I was in fog land. I mean, was the average 3 or were we above that pretty much?
Last year, the commission gave a 2% COLA and an up to 4% merit. I believe the average was like 3.5 that most employees received between
Okay.
both. This year, we increased the COLA and the merit because of the higher inflation.
Okay. I'm definitely for that.
Other comments, questions? You want to go through that?
Are we going through this too?
I think it's there for your,
Everything in here has either already been discussed or we're not looking for feedback, but we're happy to go through it if you have any specific questions.
all right?
All of these items are funded in the budget for fiscal year
And it's a
23.
rolling, so we take things off, we add things on. Commissioner Martin?
Well, I did have a question about how far along we are with the AMI stuff, but we can address that at the appropriate time.
We have 400 meters left to install.
Is that 200 houses?
Ish. Some houses have electric and don't have water, and some have water and don't, you know.
Mr. Mayor, we'll be glad to install the other 400 when we can receive the other 400. Some of those are not slated to be here till the end of December due to chip issues and supply chain issues.
Jamie, you and I discussed it. We didn't specifically address it in this wrap-up, but just for the commission and the public's remembrance, what are we doing in terms of our rock budgets, those kinds of things in this budget we're carrying through? Because I know we greatly increased that budget. It was either last year or the year before. We're carrying that into this year. Talk to us a little bit just about road. What do we get in this budget before us? What do we get in terms of roads?
It's the exact same that we had budgeted in this fiscal year. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but per our conversation, at the last quarter of every fiscal year, we look at Public Works, and if there's any line items that have any excess funds that haven't been expended, it's been our standard procedure to incorporate that in and put out more rock. You've probably seen or heard of some of the rock that's being placed on Southwest 30th West, Southwest 46th West. There's been a good bit on 30th East this year, some on Watermelon Pond and some on Holder Grade. We continue to spread that as far as we can in every fiscal year to try to establish good base and good drainage on all of those roads.
Mr. Mayor, to tag on to Jamie, we added $20,000 into the streets and roads material budget for fiscal year 2023.
Is that a rock number, or is that anything in streets and roads? Because 20,000 for rock is a pretty substantial
specifically in the
amount.
road materials, so
Okay.
it's mainly rock, but Jamie, I believe, also uses it when they need all sorts of
Patching.
asphalt and
Street signage, or when you were using rollers or contract trucking to move and place that rock, we get a much better finish on that rock when we actually roll it in.
Is the dump
the
truck
increases. The dump truck was in the current fiscal year.
Is it in service yet? Have we got that and it's helping? Not yet.
We are not expected to receive it until next May at the earliest.
What's that?
The
The
dump
new
truck.
dump truck. I was hoping to get it because I believe that that's going to be,
That's-
when we can take a load out there ourselves, that's going to help out a lot.
That will greatly increase the day-to-day productivity. As a frame of reference, this commission was generous enough to improve the replacement of a bucket truck in last fiscal year. We ordered it in October. We were told that we now don't expect to see that until after the first of the year. Yeah, December of 2023.
What?
60 next to I-75 up there by the airport.
Unfortunately, none of those are certified dielectric to do electric work like we do anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow on that, every year the increase we get in the gas tax money does go straight into the streets and roads budget.
All right. Any last questions? If not, then basically what you guys will see at the first meeting in September
2 weeks from today.
will be, here's the budget that you guys have extensively reviewed and talked about all summer long. We'll get another even briefer summary of what's in that. We'll look for a vote, and then by the end of September, we'll have the second reading on it. And by that point, we really need to, we haven't heard anything, it's all been smooth sailing, but if we don't have an approved balanced budget going into October, then the apocalypse really does happen. The city stops functioning, locusts fall from the sky, right? All that stuff. All right, any final thoughts before we move to comments? Last questions on the budget?
May I have one,
Commissioner
Mr.
Clark.
Mayor? Seaboard Drive construction on this budget, is that just plans, or is that actually, no kidding, tearing up something and fixing, putting some pavement down?
That's actually design and permitting of the water, wastewater, electric, stormwater, and roads if we get the land rights.
If we get, so if we budget this money and don't get the land rights, can we do 30th Avenue?
That's totally dependent on this commission's wishes.
I mean, I had one thought that might not be appropriate for us to launch on to tonight, right? But it does seem to me that there's a good section of Seaboard Drive that we don't have to ask anybody's permission to do the kinds of improvements that we'd like to do. So, and it might help us moving forward with CSX if we can show that we are committed to this project. So, but I think that's a conversation for later. That's gonna get us into a rabbit hole tonight. But I think that, to Commissioner Clark's point, right, we do need to internally elevate that conversation about our city roads, because I don't want us to launch off, not to take anything away from 30th, it needs to be fixed, but we need to be doing what we're asking the county to do, and internally, the roads that are ours, we need to know that if we come into a windfall, right, and somebody, the federal government sends us $1 million, we don't make a knee-jerk reaction to say, this is a road, we have our own priority lists that we've vetted and had a conversation, and that way we can stand behind, and nobody says, well, you did that road because somebody lived on that road. It's, no, we had a list, and money came available, we did the first one on our list.
Mr. Mayor, to that point, as part of the half-cent sales tax discussion, as part of the road impact fee discussion, we will have that kind of information available, and proposed projects where the commission could apply any windfall that they had, or any money generated from impact fees. So we plan on presenting that to the commission for consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, if there are no other budgetary questions, we'll move to comments. City managers, anybody got anything? All right, Madam Clerk?
I was gonna say, the real city manager did join us for work today for 5 hours. He's back
He
to work
sent us a
part-time, so.
text saying that he was back in touch for a little bit, you know?
Just wanted to brag.
Yeah,
We were glad to have him back.
yeah. Did y'all dump all the work on him? Say, here's a desk full of paper, right? Get back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to slow down. We was bringing him up to speed a little rapidly.
Yeah, yeah. One thing at a time. Each conversation is 5 hours, so. Madam Clerk, you have anything?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Coleman, you got anything? comments? Happy birthday.
Thanks. Hey,
I think it was yesterday.
we got till what, December to get our hours in? Huh?
Ethics training hours? Yeah, that sounds about right.
And we're not doing nothing up here or out over at the,
We can, if you guys want to have a Newberry one, the last couple of years, we've gone to Walker's, Folds and Walker's, just because they bring a bunch of cities and gives us a networking opportunity. But if you'd rather just do one
I'd
here,
rather do it at home.
well, they're already all online, so you can go and watch a
Right.
video online. And Madam Clerk, will you send out a link to an approved ethics?
And we
And
can do it
then-
anytime.
Yeah, you can do it in 30-minute sections. You know, you just have to attest that you've watched 4 hours of
Right.
ethics training. Any other
Last year I watched,
4 hours of ethics training from Folds and Walker. Folds and Walker gives you a nice dinner, you know.
I watched it online.
Oh, well, if you go, they give you a nice dinner. And it is nice to be. Yeah. It's more meeting folks around, that kind of thing. Commissioner Clark, you got any comments?
God bless America.
Okay, now, Monty, you just heard how it's supposed to be said. Commissioner Farnsworth, you got any comments?
God bless America and the Marine Corps.
Oh, man. He got you on that one. There you go. Good job. You got any other comments, Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin? You got any comments?
No, sir.
Commissioner Maison?
Yeah. I was walking down 15th Ave, if any of you guys know where 15th Ave is. It's kind of shaded. It was early in the morning. It was right around like 6 o'clock. And I was walking my dog and,
15th on that side, 27th this side.
no, like where I live at, just walk the dog out 15th Ave.
Street road.
And as you're coming up to 250th, you with me? And I was like, man, it was dark. It's kind of scary. And as I'm walking, I'm like, man, we sure could use some lights down there, right? And as I'm walking towards the end, I hear this big loud sound. I'm like, which way is the sun gonna like rise? And as I get to the end, I hear this loud noise, like in the brush. I look up, and it dawned on me.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. It dawned on me. Dawned. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't have any comments. When I posted the slide about the increased regulations, we have a resident who claims that there are a lot more residents who would like us to embark on a water softening system, a whole citywide water softening system. The time that I was going back and forth with her, I thought that Mike had told me that that was about a $1 to $2 million price tag. Since then, I've got a little bit more education, and to do a whole citywide water softening system, which is only really an issue these days with the tankless water heaters. If you have a standard water heater, it catches all the sediment, and so it's not as big of a problem. The tankless water heaters, the hard water comes straight through and it's eating up. So I wanted to pass on the education that I got. In order for us to have a whole citywide water softening system would be roughly equivalent to the regional wastewater treatment facility that we're doing now. So I was slightly off between $1 and $2 million and $30 to $40 million. So and at $1 to $2 million, I didn't think it was feasible
It'd be cheaper for us to pay every individual
to
to
just
get their own.
get their own a traditional. So we do have it, and I'm not trying to make light of the residents' desire. But it is and that's just the capital outlay. Then you have all the same operating requirements to run that. So if the resident is correct, and we have a large number of residents in town that want us to run a water softening system, I just want you to know, what we would be embarking on to try to meet that desire. And the first time I ever got a complaint about hard water, it ended up being the tankless water heater, right, which is what caused it. And there's been some miscommunication from the developers and the owners to the residents about whose responsibility that is and what's going on there. I think we've got that clarified, but you know, I know that I try to listen to residents when they ask for things, and they tell me that everyone in town wants this. It won't be long before they move on to you guys, but we've spent 2 or 3 years now on the regional wastewater treatment. It'd be the same kind of equivalent endeavor. Mr. Jones?
And I'd be glad to, sit down with any commissioner that wanted more in-depth information about it and explanation. But it would be a very costly endeavor, and softening water is a choice. The water that we have at City of Newberry meets the Safe Drinking Water Act. It is very hard, but any water from this part of Florida in this karst aquifer is going to have calcium carbonate hardness of the level that we have, and it really only manifests itself as a problem for residents if they have a tankless hot water heater.
And you can buy your own house-wide soft water. It's about $7,000. So if you want to make that choice, any resident is able to make that choice. I think Jamie pointed out to me, if someone that lives in the country wants a tankless hot water heater and they're not hooked to our system, then and they wanted to make the choice to add a soft water system, they could make that choice. So I just want to let you guys know that the magnitude of what that ask is way more than what I was thinking it was when I was engaging in the conversation. So that's my only comment for tonight. Public comment?
Glad to be here.
God bless America.
God bless America.
We are adjourned.